follow up, follow up, follow up. I can't tell you how many times people will be interested in something and nobody ever follows through or follows up on anything. And, I remember the majority of my career was spent in the telecom business selling phone systems. And I had one customer that we got that ended up being a very large customer, but it took me like 4 years to get that customer. They signed contracts with a couple of my competitors and went down that route a couple times. And I just constantly stayed in touch with them. And so instead of just taking no for an answer the first time and never calling them again, I check in every 6 months and go, how's that? How's my competitor working for you? Well, we're having a problem with this. Next time you go work with us, well, you guys are new, you're small, whatever. And I ultimately got them as a customer, and they were like a $5,000 a month customer.
Hey guys, I'm here with my longtime friend Braun Mincher, who started a lemonade stand at 5 years old and has grown and sold multiple companies since then. He's here to share some really great business lessons about how to be successful in any business, but most importantly, placing family above and beyond everything else. Check it out. Are you a faith-based father and you want to have the adventure of a lifetime with your son? You have to check out the father-son hike of a lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. June of 2025, I'm going to be taking a small group of fathers and sons over to Spain. We are going to spend 6 days, hike 70 miles, have some of Spain's most amazing cuisines, see some of the most beautiful places and spaces, but most importantly, spend time together bonding with our sons. If you're interested in this adventure, check out mattshoup.com. When you get to the website, click the Gentle Art of Leadership button and hover down to the father-son hike of a lifetime. Braun Mincher.
Nice to see you, Matt.
Thanks for coming up.
It's just an honor to be included. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I'm here with you in person.
I was just thinking before you got here, we met right as M&E was.
Do you remember? I
Off.
was remembering yesterday the exact date and time we met.
David introduced us, or did you introduce me to David Stansfield?
I think the latter. You and I met for the first time at the Expo in 2008. I was the keynote speaker.
Yes.
You had a table there for M&E, and I was needing some painting done at my house, and I came by your booth, and the rest is history.
Holy cow. So we're coming up on almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years.
To it. And you've got an awesome entrepreneurial success story. And I mean, you've been in the trenches of business since you were a kid.
We both have.
Like little kid. Yeah. So talk about that. Like I always love somebody's first business story. Tell me about that.
I love it. And I'm not pitching my book, but I wrote a book 15 years ago because everyone would always ask me this. So it's called The Secrets of Money. It's on Amazon. I think they still sell it in a digital format. But if anybody wants the full details, it's The Secrets of Money. And I grew up in a fairly entrepreneurial family. My parents had a large general contracting commercial construction firm. And as a kid, I just saw how hard they worked, but all the benefits of that. And I liked working hard. I followed a lot of business, publications at the time. So back then, the news stations used to actually have a business reporter. The Denver Post had a business reporter. I read a lot of the Inc. magazine. It was just so inspiring to me. And so I started the lemonade stand as a 5-year-old. But when I was 16 years old, I had a vending route. And then that turned into a variety of different businesses we can talk about. But one thing kind of led to another.
That's crazy. So lemonade at 5.
Yeah. I mean, and my mom has the photo still somewhere of a lemonade stand. And, I tried to have a bigger sign than everybody else, and everybody wants to help a kid sell lemonade. And now my kids have a lemonade stand. And, that was my first entrepreneurial start.
So I feel like, parents are going to help a kid with a lemonade stand, right? Pretty straightforward. Get a table, get some cups, get some lemonade. But I mean, to be 16 and have a vending route, I mean, if you've got a 16-year-old checking this out right now, they want to do something like that. How did you, what were those logistical steps that you took back then to get that route?
Yeah. I mean, it was a great experience. And what I had honor boxes, right? So instead of actual vending machines, which would have cost $1,000 or $2,000 a piece, I had cardboard boxes that were on your honor, and they were popular back then. The irony is, I grew up as a kid in the Denver suburban area. It was a company out of Fort Collins that advertised in the back of magazines. I think it was called Eagle Marketing. And I think they were $25 a box, and I bought 50 of them, I think, to start. And I think I ended up with 100 of them. And, you get these cardboard boxes. And back then I would go to what was the predecessor to Costco, Sam's Club or whatever it was called at the time. And I was 16 years old. So I had a driver's license and a car. So I was able to get from A to B. But one of the best experiences I had was literally placing those boxes in businesses. And I hired a guy. There was a guy that was a consultant, if you will, that drove up from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I think he charged $25, $50 per placement. But the benefit is I got to go with him because, not only you buy these boxes and so you put them together in your garage, but what do you do with them?
Yep.
And so he taught me and I followed him. It took like 2 days and we'd have them full of food, but literally go into office buildings. You always started at the top floor. So when you got kicked out for no soliciting, it was less area to walk. And so you literally, and you're not asking if you're delivery boys, you're not asking people if you can put that there. You literally walk in and talk to the reception and said, hey, we've got all these candies. Which room would you like them to be put in? And so it was just such a great, I probably paid him $1,000, which at that time was all the money in the world, but what a great learning experience, and got 50 of these boxes out with his help. And then I ended up doubling down and getting another 50 boxes on my own that I put out by myself. And I don't know, a year, 18 months later, I sold the vending route, and I think it was $5,000 or something like that. But that was my first business, building from scratch and selling it.
So just starting, learning, building, taking the punches, flipping it, selling it.
Yeah. And
on to the next thing.
People would steal candy, right? I think, and this has been 25 years ago, but I think we would collect about 80 to 82%. Right. Because it was all on your honor. And back then it was cash. There was no Venmo or any, whatever. It was, $1. You put a little price list and, most people were honest, but 20% weren't. I remember once we put a vending box in a veterinary clinic, right, in their employee lounge. And I went back, every week I'd go to service the box and pull out the cash and refill the candy. Went back to this veterinary clinic. I remember it to this day. And the guy comes out and he's got my box and it's all shredded. One night, like the squirrels or something got out and they ate all the candy and then they just destroyed the box. And he was like, he felt bad. He's like, I'm going to give you an extra $10 or whatever for your box. And it was like, what a great learning experience with a fairly low risk.
But that's super cool. And I remember those, right? They had the little slots in them and you just stick a Reese's or whatever, pack of gum, and you just take it.
Yeah. And in today's world, nobody has cash. You'd have to have electronics and be able to do Venmo and PayPal, whatever. This is kind of back in the old days. And I would read all these vending magazines, and I even had a van picked out I wanted to buy when I got my bigger route. Because I was pretty much doing this as a 16-year-old kid in my basement, right? Like I had boxes to get everything all ready. And, I had you basically would carry in a fully loaded honor box and swap it out for the partial one and go back and account the money, and had this cool little thing that would count because everything was coins, right? And so like the big coins, the smaller coins would fall through, and it was a great experience at the time.
So I remember back to when, because I worked mowing lawns, shoveling snow, doing that. That was like early, like elementary, middle school. And I was working hourly jobs in high school. But when you're in high school doing that, you're going to school, doing the business. What are kids saying to you back then? Did you fit in? Were you? Because I remember they're like, "What are you doing business thing?" They're like, "Just go get a job." What's business? I mean, I didn't have a lot of people around me to encourage me to do that. So what was around you at the time? Like, what were some of the voices?
First of all, I did both. So I had a regular job at age 16. My first job, and still is near and dear to me this day, is I worked at Sears. And that's a whole story in itself. I'll tell here in a minute. So I was going to high school. I was a junior and senior in high school. I was working at Sears, and in whatever free time I was doing this vending route. So, I was hustling.
You're not employable. There's no way.
Yeah.
You were employed?
It was my first.
We're not employable, bro.
I know. I've never had it's probably my last real job with a W-2 associated with it. Yep. And we'll talk about that briefly in a moment. But, I loved high school. I had a ton of friends. I'm still friends with a lot of those folks to this day. I was definitely odd or different, but not in a way that shunned me. Yeah. I was very involved in a lot of the business clubs there at my high school. So we had DECA and FBLA, and I don't know if those are all around to this day. And those were my jam. I loved those. I excelled at those. And recently, I just celebrated a year ago my 30-year high school reunion. And my buddy, who now lives out of state, who he and I were very competitive in these business classes, came back for that 30th year high school reunion, and we came to my house and we had dinner, and we just kind of, we just reconnected and we kind of relived some old stories. And, I still have buried away in my garage the trophy I won for like this first place state competition. We got to go to a DECA national conference in 1991 at the Disneyland Hotel. And if anybody remembers, most people are too young to remember that, but that's when the riots were going on in LA. We got locked into the Disneyland Hotel and could literally see the fires from our balcony as a bunch of 17-year-old high school kids. But I had a great time doing that. So the business clubs were great for me. I had a great network of friends. I was doing the vending route, which took 5 or 10 hours per week, but I was hustling. And then I had my very first job. I got almost the day I turned 16 at Sears. And I started out in the hardware department selling tools to old men. I had grown up, my dad had always taught me about carpentry and construction. And so I loved tools. And so I knew more about it at 16 than most adults did. And so whether it be screwdrivers or toolboxes or radial arm saws, and I remember, I mean, this is 1989, 1990, my salary in the hardware department was $4 an hour.
$4 an hour.
$4
commission?
No, that was that's a funny story. So I did that for about 4 months. That was flat rate at $4 an hour. And every time I worked a shift, I would work like the evening shifts from like 5 to 9 at the mall. And several of my friends worked there. It was just a great experience. Sears taught me so much about working with the public. I still look back fondly on that. And, you know, things had been different. I'd probably be, you know, the CEO of Sears today or something. You know, it was, you know, I liked the experience. I liked the company. But I remember back then there was a Taco Bell in the mall, and every 4-hour shift or something at work, I'd get one 15-minute break, and I would use that 15-minute break and go buy my bean burrito for 99 cents. And the way I looked at it is I made $4 an hour. So in that 15 minutes, that dollar that I got paid for my paid break bought me my bean burrito.
There you go.
And so I still eat bean burritos to this day from Taco Bell and favorably remember that time.
It's like super nostalgic. It's
very nostalgic. And
so
every
cool.
now and then, you know, I was at the Sears at Southwest Plaza Mall. I think the Sears is still there. It's in a very different format these days, but I've taken my kids there a couple of times and still walk through it. And it's just like, you know, it's 30 some odd years ago. But, you know, that was the start of my, you know, that and the vending route were the start of my career.
That's super cool. And then you get out of high school, and where do you go after that? Because we met when you were in telecom or had just sold your telecom business. And the book was out, right?
Yeah, I built and sold 3 telecom companies. Mm-hmm. And so the short version of that is while in high school, senior year of high school, spring break, all my friends went on spring break to somewhere warm, right? They went to South Padre Island or Mexico or whatever. I stayed home to start a business. And at the time, that seemed a little bit weird, but I started a bus transportation company. And at that time, the casinos in the mountain towns of Colorado, Central City, Blackhawk, and Cripple Creek were just ramping up. There was a challenge with parking up there. People didn't want to drink and drive. And so I started a bus route that would take people up to the casinos and back and forth. And so that's a whole long story itself. It's all explained in my old book, The Secrets of Money. But basically, while while all my peers were enjoying their spring break somewhere fun, I was launching this business, and I ended up building that into a pretty large ground transportation provider over a few years and sold it in 1996.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's all while still in high school.
The bus transportation company was I started it March 23rd, 1992.
Okay.
I remember that day every year and kind of nostalgically celebrate it. And so I was a senior in high school at the time, and I ended up running that business from my dorm room when I was at CSU the first year. And then things got a little hectic and crazy, and ended up moving back to Denver to oversee the business. But yeah, I was still in high school when I started that.
So going from lemonade stand to vending route to transport, how did these ideas come up? How did you wake up and go, I want to start a transportation? I mean, did somebody mention it to you?
Opportunity, you know, so to this day, I still talk to people all the time, and I'm always intrigued, whether it be you or anybody I meet. What do you do? How did you get into that? Why do you do that? What's the good thing? What's the bad thing? And so I was always asking questions. And, you know, the vending route, I was reading business magazines back in the day, and, you know, again, people don't read magazines today like they used to, but in the back, there were always ads. I don't want to say get rich quick schemes, but entrepreneurial opportunities. And I was just fixated about vending. I'm like, it'll work on my hours. It's a reasonable price to get into. Some people are successful. You can scale it, and it just fit for what I wanted to do. And at the time, I think it was a $1,500 investment to buy all the boxes, maybe another $1,000 to get the guy to place them. So for $2,500, I had a real business that was, you know, I think I made a couple $100 a week out of the something like that. It wasn't enormous money. And then, you know, a year or two later, I sold the route for $5,000. I mean, that's what more does a 17-year-old, you know, what does a 17-year-old?
And that's big money back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Especially for a 17-year-old. And back to my Sears story for a second. So I started, I think my first 3 to 4 months, I worked in the hardware department, made $4 an hour, loved it, thrived at it. But an opportunity came up in the sporting goods department, exercise and sporting goods, which was a commission position. So it was everything from like weight sets, treadmills, bicycles, basketball hoops, camping equipment. And so I had to take a pay cut. I went to $3.35 an hour, which was minimum wage back then, plus 3% of sales. And I think if I remember right, like when I was a junior in high school, I made like 12 grand that year, W-2, which my contemporaries and peers at school probably made 2 or 3 grand a year. And so I had no expenses. I lived at home. And so we lived a couple buddies and I that all had similar jobs, lived a really good life. I saved money. I paid for whatever I wanted with my car. It was just a great chance. It was very inspiring to see what you could do if you worked hard, because I was a hustler for selling. I was outselling people that had been at the company for 30 years. And here I am, this punk 17-year-old kid.
And I can just envision you. And I think I've seen photos of you when you were 17. We'll have to compare photos. But I mean, were you naturally gifted with sales? Did you learn that from your parents?
I think they were very
born with it. Some people I think are just born. They're just have the gift again and they can sell.
I think it's a little bit of both. You learn what works and what doesn't, and you close one sale. Sears also provided a lot of really good training, really simple stuff, which is like if you're going to sell vacuum cleaners, shop vacs, you always start with the most expensive one and tell the customer about that, because then everything else from there is a step down and they're seeing what they lose. And so you'd learn some really basic things about that. Sears at the time was very big into their extended warranties, and that was highly profitable for the company. And so I had a shtick that worked, and I had a high percentage of selling those. And so they had a good structure and good training. And so for a employable guy at 17, it was a great job.
What do you tell somebody that's new to sales in today's day and age? What were 3 big tips you took from that are just timeless, no matter what you're selling?
Yeah, I mean, a simple thing is just ask good questions. Listen more than you talk. I don't know how to say this any more clear. Follow up, follow up, follow up. I can't tell you how many times people will be interested in something and nobody ever follows through or follows up on anything.
Is the paint or roof on your home or business starting to look a little shabby? If so, reach out to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D Painting and Roofing is a full-service residential and commercial painting and roofing contractor in Northern Colorado. And full disclosure, I'm the M in M&D. Check them out at mndpainting.com. Are you a small business trying to navigate all of the landscape of digital marketing and don't know where to go? Reach out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. They are the go-to source for all things digital marketing. They are the producers of this podcast, and they run all of the marketing for all of my companies. Check them out at imprint-digital.com.
And, I remember the majority of my career was spent in the telecom business selling phone systems. And I had one customer that we got that ended up being a very large customer, but it took me like 4 years to get that customer. They signed contracts with a couple of my competitors and went down that route a couple times. And I just constantly stayed in touch with them. And so instead of just taking no for an answer the first time and never calling them again, I check in every 6 months and go, how's that? How's my competitor working for you? Well, we're having a problem with this. Next time you can work with us. Well, you guys are new, you're small, whatever. And I ultimately got them as a customer, and they were like a $5,000 a month customer. But it's just that follow-up. And then the final thing I would say, it's really simple, it's trivial, but very few people do it, is business cards. I give out business cards like Tic Tacs, right?
Yes.
And in today's world, I would say 95% of people do not have a business card with them. And so I don't care whether I'm standing in line at Starbucks, I'm at a cocktail party, I'm in the elevator, I have business cards with me all the time, and I hand them out like Tic Tacs. And it's just amazing how 2-3 days later, somebody will follow up with you. And in today's my business card has my social media stuff on it and LinkedIn. Yep. And it's just amazing how many people will either follow you or you'll start building a little bit of a relationship with. And so it depends on what you're selling, but I don't care if you're selling, you're selling cars, you're selling painting services, you're in telecom. People like doing business with people they know and they feel like they have a relationship with. And, $9 gets you a stack of 500 business cards. Yep. It really isn't a big deal. And I'm stunned at the amount of people that I meet. It could be, I have kids. So like we'll go to a kid's soccer game and I'll be talking to some parents and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Do you have a card? So we can talk more about it later. Oh, no, I don't have any card. I'm like, how? It's $9 for 500 of them. How do you not have a card?
What do you think about those scannable cards? I've got one of those scannable cards where
the QR code,
it saves it right to their phone so they don't have to do, or do you still like that? They've got something tangible that's in their pocket. And
it's funny
you when you pull it out.
Funny you ask. I like both because I think you need to meet people where they're at. Everybody's different these days. 100% absolutely love the physical card. You gotta have that. Perfect example is I'm a big airplane guy now, and I was at an airplane expo recently. And there's a guy, and I'm somewhat interested, that sells $2 million airplanes, right? And so I said, well, you have a nice airplane. And, I wasn't in a place to really have a deep conversation with him that day, but I'm like, can I get your card? And, I'm not really planning on calling him the next day and buying one, but I am interested and I'm thinking about it and I'd like to build a relationship. The dude sells $2 million airplanes and doesn't have a business card, right? He's like, I don't have any more. I do this electronic thing. And we couldn't get his phone to sync with my phone. Yeah. And I'm like, really? Like you didn't spend $9 and get 500. Just give me your card. So again, I'll probably sit in my desk drawer, but I'll see it a couple times. I'll remember your name. I'll see it at the next trade show. And so I just got new business cards with one of my new business ventures, and I've got physical cards, but I've got a QR code on the back. And so the theory is you can meet people wherever they're at. So it's like, look, if you want to take my card for whatever reason, you've got it, you put it in your pocket. If you're like, I don't like paper, I've got my phone here, I'm like, I'll turn it right over. You scan the QR code, great. It goes right in your phone. You can do both. But I still think, why would you not do the physical card?
Yeah. No, I've gotten away from the physical card, but I don't know. I now that you're talking about it,
I think you got to have the physical card. That's just me.
What do I have? Like my M&E card. I would just do one.
Yeah,
with everything on it.
And I do that. I've got a couple of different ones, but I try not to have 10 different cards because you don't know what to give people. What I'll generally give people, we have a family card now that actually has my kid's name on it and a picture of an airplane, and my wife and I are in the back, and it's the just general catch-all card. Yep. But again, it's a nominal cost, right? I don't care if you lose half of them. It's like you should have them in your pocket with you at all times. My kids are 7. They technically have business cards. They don't give them out a lot, but I can tell you as they get older, they'll have them. And whether they're coordinating play dates with their friends, people are not good with remembering names. Yep. And so it's like, I have a unique name, Braun Mincher. Not everybody remembers that. And so giving them a card, it's just like they can remember after the interaction, who was that sort of hyperactive redheaded kid? It's like, oh, his name was Braun. And, I put a picture of an airplane on my business cards for no reason other than it's a conversation starter and people always remember it. If you give them a card with your picture on it or just some boring graphic, it's going to go in a stack of 100 others. But yeah, I'm kind of fanatical about business cards if you haven't noticed.
No, I love that. But you talk about asking the right questions and then follow up, right? As the other two points.
Follow up. And it's like a handwritten card today is worth its weight in gold. People don't do it. Like particularly the younger generation, if you're lucky, you'll get a text with poor grammar in it, maybe one time.
They don't know how to speak, man, because they're texting and Snapchat. They don't know
You're preaching
how
to the choir.
Speak to each other.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. And
maybe that works with their generation as time goes on, but as they want, job opportunities with you or I, or want to sell us something. Again, if somebody, I get a million, like you, I get a million. First of all, don't give out my text number to a lot of people. So it's not that nobody has it, but it's not highly publicized. Emails, we get a lot of, and it's kind of impersonal. Yeah. But if somebody takes the time to write me a handwritten note about anything, it gets recognized. And so it's like, it's inexpensive to do. It's very easy and it gets recognition, but why people don't do it, I don't know.
Well, you think about noise or just marketing, right? How do you get somebody's attention? Think of everything that's fighting for our attention. How do you cut through the noise? Yeah, handwritten card.
Handwritten card sent to their house.
Yeah. What are like the sales errors, faux pas? So obviously you'd say not following up, not asking the right questions, but what are the things that just like, I watch sales and listen to some people. I'm like, this guy's horrible.
Right.
Just horrible.
Yeah.
What do you not do, Braun?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things you don't do. I mean, obviously the simple thing is you don't follow up. You don't take yes for an answer. Sometimes people don't take yes for an answer. Somebody's ready to buy and you're telling them 8 million things.
But talk about that because that is so true.
Yeah.
You're not paying enough attention because you're in your own script.
Right. You're working your way through the script and they're
just ready to go. How much is it?
You had me at hello, right? Like take their money. I think you make it very so easy, like process. And, I've started launching a new business recently and you've been the beneficiary of some of that. We're working on our onboarding process with new customers. Right. Yep. And it's like, we want to make it as easy as possible for them to get us the paperwork they need and the money. And so rather than sending them 10 different emails over 10 different days, let's consolidate this. Let's do it online. Whatever your business is, just make it really easy. I'm still stunned. My family and I travel a lot. We were in Southern California this weekend, stayed in a couple different hotels. I'm still stunned that you have to go in and go to a front desk at a hotel, show your ID, give them the info, what's your address, what's your phone number, how many nights you staying with us, can I have your credit card number? It's like, if I'm staying at Marriott, I'm like a Marriott, whatever customer. It's like, you should have all this. Like, I should get like a key to my room and just go there. Like you don't need this stuff every time. And I know big companies like that are getting there, but I'm like, I think as we go on, people are all about convenience in their life and making it easy to do business with somebody. The more you can do online, the less redundancy and duplication you need. Healthcare is sort of a perfect example of areas that more efficiency could be added to. It's like some people just don't want to go to the doctor because they don't want to fill out all the paperwork. It's like, well, I filled it out last week at the dentist and I'm basically filling out the same form. I mean, it's so crazy. You go to you go get some lab tests these days. I can't believe how this is possible, but they give you a signature pad. You can't actually see what you're signing. It's just like a signature pad on the counter. And it's like, well, this is our HIPAA disclosure, our surprise billing disclosure. And it's like, I'm signing something I can't read. Like it makes no sense to me.
Maybe it is, right? Maybe not.
What are you signing? So I think ultimately it's making it easy to do business with people. I realize regulations and policies. You need so many things documented. I know you've had a lot of people on your show that are big into real estate. There's tons of documentation in real estate and in lending, and you got to have certain things signed, but you got to make that easy on the customers. And companies like Zillow are trying to automate that process. Yeah. And so, it's really basic stuff, but it's stuff that not everybody follows. It seems like it's so intuitive.
Well, another thing that I really appreciate about you didn't mention it, but I'm sure it would be in maybe your top 5 sales tips, is just being a resource. Like you're there to sell, you're there to close, but in every approach, every conversation, it's like, I'm here to be a resource no matter what you do.
I couldn't agree
with
you.
We're not big phone customers to you. In the scope of the phone customers that you have, we're a phone customer of you, M&E is. We call, like you're there to be a resource all the time.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's like,
love that.
My whole, 50% of my week is spent being a resource for friends, colleagues, business associates on a variety of topics. I make a crazy amount of referrals. Like in 1 week, I could be asked for like a referral to a divorce attorney, a spine, like last week, I had a friend that needed a spine doctor. Another friend needed a divorce attorney. Somebody needs an estate attorney. Who do I go to for car insurance? I had a consult yesterday. Somebody wants to buy an aircraft like mine, a Cirrus, that knows nothing about it. And so all these things add value. And it's like, they're all things that interest me, but I know so many people and I love being a connector of people. And that just adds value. It's something that I enjoy. But you can be darn sure that the next time that person needs something that I sell, they're going to remember me because of that, that introduction or that referral. And I make a ton of referrals.
Yeah, and I love that, just connecting people to other people, and they remember you because of that. They all of a sudden they've got 6 new companies in their life, and you were the common thread. Right. And then you stay in touch with them, and you're always a resource.
Yes,
and they call you when they need you.
And I love it. I mean, relationships are my thing, right? That's sort of my special sauce. And what I really enjoy is connecting with people. And, you and I have talked about and been connected with everything from insurance to painting to phone systems and investment fund, whatever. Yep. And it's like, I'm a resource to you. You're a resource to me. And I love that. It's just, we add value to each other, but it also makes it fun. It makes whatever business you're in very personal.
Well, the last thing too is just being honest, right? So we'll talk about investor sources. Okay. We're getting ready to invest in that, and I've been ready. Finally got the money out of the freaking place I had it. That was an ordeal, but we've got it, and I'm ready, Braun, ready to go.
We're ready to take it.
Hold on, guys. We got something going on where it's probably not the best time. Like, we could take your money.
Well, it was just a brief pause, and luckily we worked right past it. But we did. Hopefully that while it just delayed us a week, that honesty and that transparency, I'm sure. It's like, these guys are honest. Like where would a bank or a Fortune 500 company ever say, hey, just pause for a couple of days. Let's get this one situation figured out. We got our arms around it. We're in a good place. Let's go.
Well, it's like when you're honest, when you're there to be a resource, when you care, when you're doing business with friends, people that ultimately trust you, that's just the right thing to do. You see so many people that just don't do the right thing. Yeah. No matter what the industry is, just to make that quick, short buck.
And I know we're going to, talk about my new venture a little bit, but my name's on the door, right? It's like more than anything, my name and my reputation are worth more to me than anything. And I can never guarantee success or results in any business or anything. I can do the best I can, and I can be honest with people. But at the end of the day, it's my name and my reputation. And it's just like, I take that responsibility really seriously. And I don't care whether I'm selling, you are a representative of M&E Painting. You are an exceptional representative, but it's your and Emily's name. I mean, your company is M&E. You're the M, she's the E. Yep. And so it's like, whatever impression people have of M&E Painting reflects back on you and Emily personally. And it's like, whether it be you or your employees or your staff or whatever, they need to represent that because it reflects on you, positive or negative, but you want it to be positive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember we were sitting having sushi. I think this was before you went all in with Investor Source. And you're like, man, I remember, bachelor days and, business days and bachelor days. You're like, now I'm married, I've got kids, and I want to spend tons of time. I love that you want to spend all that time with the family. They're the priority. And you're like, hey, I need something that checks these boxes in terms of business and what I like to do in business and, the income opportunity and everything. And then you're like, I think this is going to be the direction I'm going. And I remember we talked about that.
I'm glad I remember that conversation. It took 18 months to kind of put this deal together and just do the due diligence and make sure it's the right fit. But when I was single, and entrepreneurial, I'd work 80 hours a week and wouldn't think anything of it. My whole life was the business and things that went along with that. And I lived a good balanced life. But that was my priority. And as you know, you have to have kids in a family before you can actually feel what that's like. Yeah. But I have I have twin boys that are now 7 years old. I found the right woman, right? I'm happily married, but my family is my priority these days. And so I want to be there I don't need to be there for every dinner and every breakfast, but I need to be there for the majority of them. And if my kids have an event at school, last night we were at a Cub Scout meeting, like I want to be able to do that. And I can't work 80 hours a week like I used to. The benefit is, now I have 30 years of experience that I didn't have. I have capital that I didn't have when I was starting. And I have all these contacts that I didn't have. And so I was trying to find something that would allow me to leverage all these things and work a reasonable amount of time, but not, I don't need to pay my dues like I once did. And so that's a great position to be in. And after selling my third telecom company about 5 years ago and spending time with my kids as they were young and growing, they're very, very formative years and being very involved is, a couple of years ago, it's like they're in school now. I just wanted to find something to do. And so I found the right fit for me.
So talk about that. Talk about Investor Source.
Yeah. So I'm part of I'm a deal junkie and I love real estate. I love banking. I know you have a lot of people on the show that have a huge background in real estate finance. So I know that's very germane to you and your audience. And so basically in conjunction with a friend of mine, Dave Goldberg, we're in the private lending business. And so the most simple way I describe what we do is we're like a bank, except we're not a bank, like a business bank. And so we have a private fund.
You got a pain in the ass, like a lot of the banks, right?
I mean, it creates opportunity, but realize I'm the founding shareholder in a local business bank that started in 2005. It's been wildly successful. It's a great business, but it is really boring. It is, highly regulated. Everything has to fit within a box, and it serves a niche and it'll be there for a long, long time. And it's a stable business.
And you can't go out of the box, even if you want to, even if
not in a bank.
No, this person's out of the box, but it'll work out. We'll make money. You can't do it.
There's so much regulation in the banking business. And a lot of that goes back to, I know you've talked on your show about sort of the collapse in 08, 09, 10. And there's just, particularly as it relates to consumer lending, right? Like consumers got the short end of the stick. The government bailed a bunch of people out and it doesn't really matter what the reasons are, but banking is very regulated. So our new venture is called the Investor Source. It's based right here in Loveland, Colorado. The company's been around, been making loans since 2011. Dave started the fund, which is a separate part of the business I'll talk about, in 2018. So we've got 7 years of history there. And I was going to start my own fund. And so through the years, even while I was building my various telecom businesses, I've had a real estate license now for 20 years. I passed the mortgage broker exam in 2007, never used it, but just always fascinated with it. I've been involved in more than 100 real estate transactions. I was on my path to own 100 rental properties. And a few years ago, I just decided to start selling stuff off and simplifying. And that's a whole different story. But a lot of people have some capital. And they want to do something other than just be a landlord that's not as lucrative, at least in this market, as it once was. And there's still money to be made in essentially fix and flips. And it's not as simple as you just find something listed and add some paint and sell it. The people that are doing that and doing it successfully are very good at finding deals, buying it at the right price, knowing what to do to add value and fix it up, and then finding their way out of that, whether that's a refinance and permanently owning something, whether it be a storage facility, a commercial building. I think for a lot of reasons, you're starting to see a beginning of people taking commercial properties and converting them to residential. We need less commercial these days and more less commercial, more residential these days. And so again, kind of getting back to the Investor Source and what we're doing, I was going to start my own fund, and my friend Dave is like, "Well, why don't you come join me?" And I've already got a lot of this infrastructure built. And so that's ultimately what I did, and we're getting everything spun up there. But we're a legitimate business. We've got a nice little fund with about $12 million of Dave and I's money in it, as well as a handful of accredited investors. I love real estate. I love deals. I am a deal junkie. So the deal flow was like, I kind of had three requirements of whatever my next business was going to be. Number one, the business just has to be cool and fascinating, something outside the norm, right? I didn't want to run a normal bank. I don't want to run a Taco Bell franchise. I don't want a Jiffy Lube. I don't want something that I've done or that's anybody could do is just standard. I don't want a job. And so the private lending business, there's a huge niche for it, and it's growing particularly as banks tighten their lending, and there'll always be a role for banks, both consumer and business. And we fit just a little niche, but we work with real estate investors who are generally going to be in the property. At least our role in the property as a lender is going to be 1 year or less. We charge a premium over what a bank charges, but we're not, we're not the knee breaker Jersey Boys, loan shark type rates. But they don't really care. A couple extra points to us is not a big deal. There's so much opportunity in their deal. They need to be able to close quickly, easily. And for whatever reason, they fit outside the box. We don't do bad deals, but we do deals mainly in Colorado and Wyoming. And it's just been a ton of fun, and we want to double the fund size. We want to welcome some more investors like you, and grow it. And then we'll just see where that future holds, and whether we start a separate fund that gets into speculative real estate. But I love the relationship building. I love seeing all the deals. I love the deal flow, and it's my next thing.
One of the things you talked about too is there's a lot more demand for the capital than the capital, right, in the fund right now. I mean, you don't have a shortage of investors that.
Correct. We have a line out the door of borrowers, and we're very,
investors, borrowers.
Yeah, borrowers that have deals to be done that are good deals. It takes a lot of time and effort on our end to vet deals, right? People call and they don't always have all the details on it, but they're like, I've got a great deal to buy this thing, and it's like, well, how much money are you putting in? What's your upside? And we have a well process, and we have a couple team members that basically help with that intake process in vetting that deal. But we do have more people that want to borrow than we have capital in the fund. And so we are very consciously, very thoughtfully growing our capital stack. But we don't want to grow it too fast, because if we doubled our capital overnight, we don't have that many excellent borrowers. And so it's a chicken and an egg thing. So it's just like, as the capital goes up a little bit, we'll do a couple more loans. As that capital goes up, we'll do a couple more loans. And it's keeping that balance. And Dave is really the master, as the fund manager, of balancing that. And a perfect equilibrium for us is having 100% of our money out at any given time working for our investors. So we're always building our funnel, but luckily our funnel of borrowers is much larger than our capital. Whether it'll stay that way forever or not, nobody knows, but that's a good position to be in. And part of the fun is managing that equilibrium.
Yeah. I want to change gears a little bit. So I remember, Riley was 7. Was he 7?
Flying.
8? Yeah. And we drive over. We're living over in Windsor. We drive across the highway over to the airport there. You're like, jump in the plane, Matt. And I'm not scared of heights when I go in big commercial planes.
Yeah.
You took me up not high enough in your plane. And I'm freaking out. We're flying to Greeley to go have breakfast.
Yeah, I remember it was a little bumpy flight too. We had to come back one time. We've flown together a couple of times.
I've been more scared once in my life, and I'll share shortly. But I'm sitting there and I'm sweating, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, this thing's shaky. You can feel everything. And you're like, Matt, hey, real quick, just if I have a heart attack or I go down, this thing's going to start nosedive. And he's like, just pull this lever. It's got a parachute. And then I felt a little relieved.
Awesome.
Man, I was freaking out, but flying, you've been doing it. No big deal for you. Right? How'd you get into that?
That's a great question. So earlier this month, it's October 2024. October 4th was 20 years of me being a licensed pilot. And so when I had my very first telecom company, CTI Communications, back in the early 2000s, I was growing the business. Most of our business at the time was around Colorado and Northern Colorado and Denver. But we started moving up market and selling phone systems like to call centers and municipalities and multi-location businesses. And we had opportunities in the outlying states, Nebraska, Texas, New Mexico. I remember one specific trip. We had to go to rural Nebraska to meet with a potential client. And it was a good deal, but I had to drive out there. I had to lose a day in the office. It was a 7-hour drive to rural Nebraska, and left there, had to drive out, get a night in a hotel, do the meeting from 9 to 11 a.m. the next morning, and then drive home. So it cost me 2 days. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And we were having more and more opportunities like that. And I'm like, I never had a background in aviation. Nobody in my family was a pilot. A couple times as a kid, somebody took me on a sightseeing flight like you. Taken you and Riley on a couple times now. And so at the time, the Fort Collins downtown airport was straight across the street from my office on Mulberry Street, where you're.
Yeah. Right.
Remember? Mm-hmm. So it was super convenient for me. And I started taking flying lessons in the summer of 2003. And I would go fly early in the mornings, sometimes at 5 a.m. I had this young kid as my instructor. He was a CSU student. We're still friends to this day, but he was like 20, 21 years old. So yanking a CSU student out of bed at 5 in the morning, good luck. We still joke about that to this day.
That's commitment, though.
That was commitment. Yeah, he's a FedEx pilot. To these, he's living the dream and living a great life. So it took me about a year to get my license, and so I'd fly a couple times a week and get my hours, and then fly with him. I started doing business meetings out of state, and I'd take him with me because I needed an instructor. So it took me about a year. I got my license, and for me, aviation is what really grew our business. I was able to go see customers quicker, faster, easier in more rural places where my competitors couldn't or wouldn't. And I remember one customer we got in my telecom business in rural Nevada ended up being a multi-million-dollar customer for us. The most rural spot in Nevada you've ever seen, like you can't get there from here type thing. We saved them $23,000 a month in what our solution provided at the time. Our competitors would never come visit them. This is sort of before the days of Zoom and that sort of being normal. And I remember talking to them and saying, gosh, we sound like a good fit for one another. This client was a referral. And I'm like, how about I come out tomorrow for lunch? And they're like, you know where we are, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know exactly where you are. And they're like,
you know how to get there?
Yeah, really? I'm like, can you grab me there? They're like, of course. And so they were just so impressed with that level of responsiveness and service.
If you're a Christian small business owner, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. They are a Christian peer advisory community here in Northern Colorado and the Front Range that is designed to give you encouragement, support, and insight to grow your business with other like-minded Christian business owners. Not only are they a sponsor and a partner of this podcast, but I'm also a member of their community. Check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. If you've got junk in your life or business that you need removed, reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts. They are a full-service junk removal company, and they'll be able to take care of you at your home or your business to get rid of whatever you don't want. Check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com.
That I was able to build my telecom business, just sort of that accessibility. It made me more efficient. And as I got more experience flying, I started with a smaller plane. I started with a Cessna 182. And, now I've flown all sorts of things from that all the way up to small jets. And I have a Cirrus SR-22, which is the plane with the parachute. I
want one with a parachute. Don't go in one without a parachute, guys. Yeah. I don't know. That freaks me out.
It is a great safety feature, particularly for passengers and spouses. Yep. We just had our annual, they call it migration. It's the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association annual meeting in Scottsdale. And we review all the accident statistics and the saves. And I think people can go to cirruspilots.org and pull up all the data on it. I think in 22 years, we've had 160 parachute pulls. 99% of the people walked away unscathed. Several of the people on that list are very dear friends of mine that would not be here today had it not been for the parachute. And so if you have the ability to have a safety feature like that, why would you not do it? And a friend I talked to yesterday is a airline pilot, a former military pilot, airline pilot, works for United, is looking at buying his first general aviation airplane for him and his spouse. And she will not fly in a plane that doesn't have a parachute. And he doesn't know anything really about the Cirrus. So I was kind of, again, being a resource, I was being a resource for him. And he's like, she just won't fly in anything without a parachute. And it's like, This guy's a 20,000 hour former military fighter pilot, flies jets, and he's sold on the parachute. And so, good job for Cirrus. They're the only general aviation maker that has that out of the factory as a standard feature. And now Cirrus has sold over 10,000 of those.
Well, you hear about, when a plane goes down, right? And it's a family traveling for a vacation, and it seems like it just makes the headlines more, it hits harder, but you look statistically, right? Doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, statistically, it's still the safest way, still the safest way to travel. I had to get on I-25 to come up here for the meeting, and that's scares me. I would have much rather flown. Yeah. Sometimes I live at the Erie airport, right? So I live right on an airport halfway between Loveland and Denver. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have meetings in the Denver Tech Center and I'll fly down. But yeah, flying has gotten safer. Weather and lack of training of some pilots and some poor decision-making leads to accidents. We went through all the accident data recently. And so I think it's very important, me included, to stay on top of training and redundancy and then not make bad decisions. But the safety equipment out there is better than it's ever been.
Are most of the accidents from poor decisions, flying, weather? You shouldn't be without that experience.
Yeah, it's a variety of things. Now realize GA, general aviation, is sort of like all the, let's just say, private pilots, right? Everything from your Cessnas to your Cirrus. The people that you're not running an airline, you're not running a charter company, GA, general aviation, that's sort of a big bucket. Statistically, the Cirrus are safer. The Cirrus pilots have fewer accidents than the general aviation as a whole. Part of it is the Cirrus community believes very heavily in training and has a very regimented training program. You're not required to do this. The smart people do. Statistically, if you're one of the people that doesn't follow the training regimen, you're 10 times more likely to have an incident or an accident. And then the parachute is a huge X factor, right? Like it just adds another level of safety. It's not going to compensate for something totally stupid. We still have more accidents than we should. Luckily, there's data gathering on all the airplanes these days, and I'm talking again the Cirrus land. I'm kind of a Cirrus fanboy. It's like what I like. It's what I know, and I'm not knocking any of the other brands, but they are heads and shoulder. They're the top selling single engine airplane out there. They really cater to a market like guys like you and me that are busy business people, not necessarily professional pilots. But that airplane is constantly logging data about every aspect of flight, and I can download that data and analyze it. And there's websites that are actually free that will actually model my flight and do 3D, 4D modeling after the flight. It will rate my landings and my approaches. One of the most dangerous areas in flying is the actual approach. And people are carrying too much power into the approach. They're not having stabilized approaches. And so again, I'm a not professional pilot, right? It's not my business. I'm a business guy that flies both for fun and to help further my business. And so data helps all of us make decisions. And so again, I'm a big fan of the Cirrus and the data that provides in helping me be a safer pilot and the whole community, which ultimately makes the whole experience safer.
You got into this initially because it was a benefit to the business. It was a time safe. If there's a business owner and they're starting to travel and they're taking that 2-day road trip to rural, wherever, spending time, spending money, what does the financial aspect of that look like? Because I think people hear plane, they think Grant Cardone jet.
Yeah, that's
and it's not one of those. Like, what can you get in for? Can you lease these? I mean, what?
It's for a bit. Almost any successful businesses, it's very at the level that I'm in at is very justifiable. So, a used airplane, and I'm being very generalistic, and I'm going to be specific to Cirrus just because that's what I know. It's not to say there's not other options out there, but the Cirrus aircraft holds 4 people. It can be pretty much an all-weather aircraft. You still don't want to go in icing and storms unnecessarily. The plane is rated to do it with a qualified pilot. Plane can go 900 miles, does a little over 200 miles an hour. So figure the math on that. Whether you're going from here, I can do from here to Southern California nonstop. I can do to Arizona nonstop. I can do St. Louis. I've had my plane all over the country, actually all over the world. I've been all through the Bahamas, Cuba, Canada. But the financial aspects, while you can rent these planes, that's not the easiest thing to do. It's not impossible. A used version of a nice Cirrus is $500,000. A brand new one is $1.2 million, $1.3 million. Mm-hmm. Operating costs while the engine is spinning is a few $100s an hour with fuel and maintenance. And so, if you've got a business trip and you need to go to Southern California or somewhere in, Las Vegas or whatever that is, maybe that trip's a couple grand round trip of actual hard costs. It would be difficult to be a brand new young pilot from an insurance and a training standpoint and be able to comfortably do that trip until you have 300 to 500 hours. Yep. But you could do shorter trips, take an instructor along, take another qualified pilot along. But once you hit that level, that the FAA is not going to be your problem, right? Once you get a license, which you can get at 40 hours, you are by the FAA allowed to fly that plane. You may need an instrument rating, which is another 40 hours to fly in bad weather, but that does not make you proficient at doing that. However, the sort of equalizer is the insurance companies. And so you don't have to have insurance. 95% of the people do. The insurance company will mandate how many hours, and they want to see in a Cirrus, which is a high performance aircraft. You can get into a lot of trouble, but it's also a very capable airplane. We'll want to see probably 300 to 500 hours of experience before they'll insure you to fly that solo. But there's lots of instructors out there that, you pay them and you're running a business, you can do that. And then sort of the world's your oyster after, I wouldn't not necessarily start with a Cirrus unless you had a qualified pilot to take with you. But the next step up is a turbine airplane like a TBM or a Pilatus. And I have experience with those as well. And they're bigger and faster. And then you got to start getting into the small jet world. And I've been down that route, too, as business justifies it. So it's a tool, right? Sometimes people mistakenly think it's a toy, it's a hobby. It is most definitely a tool.
Started as a tool, became a passion, as well as still continue to use it as a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool, but it's a passion. I enjoy doing it. And proficiency, it's like in anything you do, whether you're a race car driver, or a mechanic, or a brain surgeon, you need to have a passion about it and do it to be good at it. So I enjoy it. I don't want it to be my business because I think I would lose some of my passion for it. But I just did a recent business trip where I did like 3 cities over 4 days. And there's no way I could have done that commercially. And I did business in Dallas, Arizona, Grand Junction and back. I carried a couple passengers with me on different pieces of the leg. I just couldn't be in all these different places at once. And it's like that tool allows me to do that and allowed me to, that morning I departed, I had breakfast with my family. It just lets me be more efficient. So for me, my airplane is my secret weapon, no matter what my business is.
I love that. So we opened up the podcast and talked about, the origin story and starting the business. And I think a lot of people in the phase of starting a business and they're just in the trenches, right? Can take huge value from that. We're on this different end or different place in the journey. And we have sushi a lot over at the sushi joint because it's good stuff.
We both love it.
And we were just talking about like, hey, we have the fortune after you do 20, 30 years in business, you're successful, you make good decisions. There's certain things we don't have to do this anymore. So what is it that drives you now versus what drove you then? What kind of legacy do you like? Why does this all matter at this point?
Great question. For me, I want to do something that makes me feel that I matter and that is challenging and engaging for me. And I've been fortunate it's been about 5 years since I sold my last telecom company. And I've definitely kept busy. I've not sat at home and watched TV or cartoons. I have various businesses and investments, and I've done consulting work. And I just wanted something that would keep me engaged with interesting business, talented group of people, an opportunity to make a reasonable return on my investment, based on my effort and my success. And so it's like just being engaged in something, being able to network with people, talk with them. I like people and I like being able to help people, but I also like the stories. I like the engagement. I like feeling appreciated. And I've done at various times, I put a lot of effort when I've had time. I put a lot of effort into sort of nonprofit volunteer efforts. And sadly, almost consistently, those have not been very fulfilling to me. I just never felt appreciated. My talents, it was very inefficient. When it lacks sort of the free market business model, people just don't act rationally and they don't make decisions that you would in a regular business. And so that's what drives me and motivates me. Plus I also want to set a good example for my kids, and it's good for them to see a parent that gets up and does something, not every day, but most days, and is passionate about that. And my kids, they ask very good questions about what I do and what we do. And, one of my, again, I got 7-year-old twins. So I've got one of them that's fascinated, as weird as this sounds like, with being a bankruptcy lawyer, right? So
7.
That's 7. Yeah. He can tell you about chapter 7, chapter 11 and trustees. And I was fortunate a few years ago, I have been a trustee on a couple of large bankruptcies where I've sort of been I was the chairman of the creditors committee on a bankruptcy that went through, and I had some experience a year or so ago. And again, luckily I've never been the one going bankrupt, but have seen this process work. And it's like, the only people that make money in this is the attorneys. It's a very lucrative business. There's one that I'm tangentially involved in. I'm a very small investor in a company that declared bankruptcy a year and a half ago. It's got 10,000 investors in it. And luckily my dollars are insignificant. But the attorneys involved, the attorney's fees in this bankruptcy are over $1 million a month. The attorneys are billing, and there's lots of them, lots and lots of them. They get $2,000 an hour. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, whether there'll be some reform on that or not in the future, I don't know. But these big companies go bankrupt. There's a discussion right now about Spirit Airlines is getting ready to likely going to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Their merger with JetBlue didn't work out. They've got a bunch of loan payments that are due on the 21st of October. So my 7-year-old was asking, we were at the airport the other day and he was seeing the Spirit Airlines. We got to talk about it and he's asked this several times, but he's just fascinated with it. And I think that's really cool that he just explores all these different things. And so I want to try to be a good model for my kids on what's possible. They don't have to follow my route. My kids I have twins, but they'll likely do different things, but it's really cool that they can be exposed to different things.
How's becoming a father changed your life?
Because
we've had these conversations.
Yeah, night and day different. And you were one of the first people that came down and saw my kids when they were born. And somewhere dug up recently a photo of you holding them when they were like six pounds. I mean, that was 7 years ago, right? Yeah. And you were one of the first 10 people that showed up within the first week. And, I went through life thinking I was going to be single forever and I was content with it and happy. And I lived a great life. I wasn't upset about anything, but within a very short period of time, I met the right girl and everything just fell into place after that. And I wasn't really looking. She fell for you right away though, right? Wasn't it? She fell for me. Yeah, hopefully she.
That's what I say about Emily, but that's not true.
Yeah, no, I married way outside of my league.
We both did.
I know. Yeah. Cheers for that, brother. We both got very lucky. So what I tell people is I went from being a single bachelor living in a really cool penthouse loft in downtown Fort Collins, just doing my thing, being an entrepreneur. And then basically within 3 years, I had a wife, a house in the suburbs, and 2 kids.
Yeah.
That's a pretty quick change. And, a lot of things happen with that. But, my wife and I were both in our young 40s when we met. Neither one of us had been married before. We knew early on that it was we were just the right fit for each other. We just celebrated 8 years of marriage, which is fantastic. We have a great story about how we got engaged and how we got married. It was all a secret. It was a fun thing. We're very fortunate to have the boys. They are the absolute center of our world, but your life does change. I never really understood prior to having kids, how that becomes your focus and your center. I kind of looked at people that had kids and I just didn't understand, and until you become a parent, you never really do.
I remember when you came up and our kids were little.
Yeah.
What do you want to hold them? You're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, I had no idea. And you go to dinner with somebody with kids and you're like, can the kid just be quiet? Can we have our conversation? You just learn things now. And now it's just you just learn, you don't give in to their every whim, but you also are smart enough to know that certain things with kids will make life easier. Whether you're going to dinner, they need sleep and they need food, right? And if they're unhappy, it's probably one of those two things is deficient. And you just have a little more grace. And, it's been a great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's the toughest job that I've ever had. I feel very fortunate that from a business and financial standpoint, I achieved what I wanted to achieve prior to their arrival. I have a buddy of mine who's 3 or 4 years younger than me. So he's in his late 40s. He's got 3 grown kids and he's a grandfather times 2 and he's 47. And so he intentionally was a young father. I remember when he got married, we went to CSU together. He got married when he was 21, started having kids immediately. He's been very successful in a real estate career, and he was able to do it. But he's also a unique guy. But I just look at the effort it took to build a business, and I'm not sure I could have done that to the degree that I did if I had kids, right? Because that is your absolute priority. And I've certainly passed over some business opportunities and not maximized some business opportunities ever since the kids came along. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it's I don't want to work 80 hours a week and I want to prioritize my family. And you can't do both.
Yeah. And you see some people that they don't learn that lesson or don't realize that. And then it's too late. The kids are 15, 18 out of the house.
Yeah.
Where were you? What
happened? And if you've got to work, 40, 50, 60 hours a week while you're trying to raise kids just to put food on the table, that's a tough thing. And everybody's got a different path. So just because something was the right fit for me doesn't mean it's the right fit for you or for somebody that's listening to this. But in hindsight, I am very happy that I'm very happy I did what I did when I lived a great life when I was single. I traveled all over the world. I had lots of great experiences. But when I found the right person, I was ready to get married. I was ready to have kids. but it changes drastically. Like you just don't pick up, you know this, your kids are older than mine. You just don't pick up and go. You don't have that flexibility. You know, when it's time to leave the house, we're off like a herd of turtles, right? It's like, how can it possibly take so long to go to the bathroom, get our clothes on, remember to take our sunglasses? It's just like nothing happens quick.
No, it doesn't. Man, dude, thanks for coming up.
Oh, it's great fun. I mean, we covered a variety of topics today.
Yes.
I'm honored to be included here today, and you know, I just appreciate our friendship.
Well, thanks for all these years, and I know many more to come. And I was just thinking as we're talking, so many of the great connections and friends that I have in my life and business and everything we're doing are because of you.
Well,
as we're going down the list. So thank you for that.
It's symbiotic. So thank you. I mean, you've been such a great resource and a friend to my family. You know, we've become great friends. It's been fun to see you grow through your entrepreneurial ventures and grow all your different businesses. You know, I got the chance to see your kids again recently who are, I don't want to say all grown up, but boy, they're a lot bigger than when I first started hanging out with you.
They both might be taller than you. I know Riley is for sure.
He's a big kid.
Haley's on the way.
Yeah. I mean, awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, we wrap up every show the same way. You've got your favorite color there, the statement that you want to leave with the world when you leave it. What is it?
Here's my statement. It says, it's not who you know, but more importantly, who knows you. And it gets back to my whole relationship thing. And so people think it's important. Well, I know this guy or I know that guy. It doesn't matter. It's important that they know you and know who you are.
Love it. Braun Mincher.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks. I would be extremely grateful if you would go to mattshoup.com and click on the free tools and download those. On my website, you'll find that I've got some things for you wherever you are on your journey in life, leadership, and business. Start with those free tools. Maybe next, check out a couple of my books, my video coaching series, or maybe consider even coming to spend a week with me in Spain on one of my leadership adventures. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better.